Hi, it's Kirby Summers. Today is February the 8th, 2024, and I welcome you to my true crime podcast. For those of you who are new to me, I have been reporting on the Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm going to use quotes, associates since Epstein's arrest on July 6, 2019. That's pretty much when I dropped everything that I was doing and began a Twitter account, which at the time was, called Kirby Summers. It was removed by Elon Musk when he purchased Twitter in November of 2022. I was literally the first person to share information on Leslie Wexner, who in 1985 purchased just shy of 800 stores from Meshulam Riklis. He purchased the learner shops, just shy of 800, and Riklis is the father of my abuser. And so I began writing about Wexner. It was initially on my website, kirbysummers.com, and pretty much people would just mainstream media and then these indie journalists who now have a very large following, they pretty much would come to my website, take the information that I would write and share in the beginning before I began my newsletter, which I later called Epstein Project, which is now on Substack, and it's just really just called Kirby Summers. And they would never attribute my work. I would cite the places where I got information, some of the old articles in the past. There was another person, Bob Petrakis, who had been writing about Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. He lives in Ohio. He and I spoke at the time that I began working on the Epstein, Wexner, Maxwell. I mean, the names really are endless story. And he too complained that there were some people who were taking his information or calling him and never giving him attribution, which he felt he deserved. He was writing about Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein in the 1990s and actually received death messages to be basically so that to silence him. They just didn't want any of the information to be leaked out. What I've been doing is I've been working on a series, as some of you know, it's called Deconstructing Wexner. However, today I uploaded an article for free on my Substack. I'm going to leave the link below so that you can read it. It is about Elizabeth Stein, who was a former employee of Leslie Wexner. She worked at Henry Bendel. And there's information that I include info about Andy Warhol. I include info about Bill Clinton. I include info about Monica Lewinsky, people that no one else knows how they fit into this story. Whenever mainstream, for example, talks about Leslie Wexner, they don't ever tell you how he fits into the Epstein story, other than to say the mansion on 71st Street. They very rarely do they even mention the mansion next door. In fact, I think almost never they mentioned the mansion next door, which was also given to Epstein by Wexner. Or, in the beginning, sometimes they would talk about the building on 66th Street, which of course most people by this point know is sort of owned by, and I'm using owned in quotes, by Jeffrey Epstein's brother. Okay. But it just the the story is being manipulated by not just the attorneys, as some of you have begun to find out, David Boies, J. Stanley Pottinger, and Bradley Edwards, along with some of the other attorneys. but also some of the early journalists who came onto the scene, they have stayed on a very superficial level regarding the really a very thin layer of the so-called Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring. It is much deeper than this. I've been sharing, like, for example, in part 3 of Deconstructing Wexner, I went back and I collected some of the images from Epstein's Island, and I share how that's connected to some of the programs for the United States, connected to some of the things concerning Israel, connected to the CIA, connected to things that happened not just during World War II, but some of the things that have been with us for many centuries. This is not new. What was happening is just tiny, tiny, tiny. So then you have somebody like Ari Ben-Menashe who comes around and says, oh yeah, Mossad hired him to work with Ghislaine Maxwell on a small project. But then what that does is that it removes the focus from the CIA to Mossad, and it shuts down any ability that you and the public has to really look at the depth of this monster, because what we're looking at is a very big slice of history that's not in our history books. I'm not going to say too much more. I'm going to leave the link for you below so that you can read what I published earlier today. And I mean, I would have to think that a lot of the pushback that I get is because, yeah, I was stuck in that world for 8 years. I have been for 30 years before that trying to get my story out there. I was stopped at every step. I was kidnapped. I've almost been murdered on 3 different occasions that I'm even aware of. I mean, the pushback is intense, and the people that are getting, quote, the credit for exposing Epstein are not necessarily the people who have the knowledge to connect the dots in the right way. And those people would be people that do know some of these players. So some of the Epstein victims may have more information. Let's say somebody like Virginia Giuffre clearly has a lot of information about how Andrew fits into the picture. Someone like myself, connected to Rickless, connected to Wexner, connected to Epstein, all of the same places, all of the same people, you know, those of us who have an inside grasp are able to spot things that somebody else who just has a superficial grasp from the publicly available material, which is, let's say, the document drops, that's the legal stuff. So you can only get so much. You don't get the origin of how this happened or how it connects to, let's say, somebody like Savile, or what's happened in Australia, or other things that have happened in the United States previous to the Epstein story. You don't get any of that. You don't get to see how they interconnect, how they're all kind of like part of the same thing by reading the court documents, although I do encourage you to read as much of that as you can. But it's kind of like a struggle to be heard when even on Twitter I see that, I'll publish something, and with the account that I've been using, which I had to start using after my Twitter disappeared in November of 2022, it gets 50 views. I used to get 5,000, 10,000 views per tweet. And now if I get 50 views per tweet, it's a lot. Thank goodness I have my Substack, where I have, thousands of subscribers. And thank goodness I have my Patreon where, you know, a lot of people can listen to my podcast where I feel a little bit more comfortable, as I have said repeatedly on this platform, sharing information that I can't possibly share here. But anyway, the link is below. I thank you for liking this so that it can register on this platform's algorithm. And if you have not subscribed, this is where I keep everybody informed as to my work, where to find it, what I'm doing, so on and so forth. Okay, guys, have a good day. Bye.